The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog has warned of a potentially dangerous situation around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear station in Ukraine. Officials installed by Moscow have begun evacuating people nearby. It comes as the leader of Russia's Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, says he'll carry out his threat to withdraw his fighters from the strategically important city of Bakhmut starting next week. The Ukrainian forces are still dug in there despite months of Russian attacks.
Ukrainian troops bitterly holding on despite the onslaught. These soldiers on the outskirts of the eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut say Russian forces have been throwing everything at them in recent days, but they're not giving up.
The enemy has been trying to storm our front positions for the past week. We successfully stopped them. This morning, around 5 a.m., up to 2 enemy squads charged in our direction. Their push is ongoing, but as you can see, we're holding them.
Despite being under Russian siege for some 10 months, Ukraine still has a foothold in the frontline city. But it comes at a heavy human cost. Something Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky acknowledged in Kyiv as he marked Ukraine's Infantry Day. He paid homage to the nation's soldiers, praising their bravery and strength.
Our heroic infantry is the basis of defense on the battlefield, and therefore you are the source of strength for our entire Ukraine, for all those who fight for our country.
Meanwhile, on the Russian side, apparent disunity. The Wagner paramilitary group has been spearheading Russia's efforts to capture Bakhmut, but has reportedly suffered heavy casualties. The head of the mercenary force, Yevgeny Prigozhin, blames the Russian Defense Ministry for those losses, citing a lack of ammunition. Now he's reportedly asked Moscow to allow his forces to pull out of the city and be replaced by those of Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov. The head of the Muslim-majority republic says his Bakhmut forces are ready to step in. But both men say any transfer won't take place until the 10th of May, after Russia celebrates Victory Day in World War II.
For more on this, I'm now joined by former British military intelligence officer Frank Ledwidge. Frank, good to see you again. Can you tell us how likely you think it really is that the Wagner Group will withdraw from Bakhmut?
Well, good afternoon, Claire. I think it's unlikely that they will withdraw or that they will be replaced by Bakhmut for the following reasons. To do so would be to acknowledge defeat in what has been a very major battle. Secondly, Bakhmut are not, that's the Kadyrovtsi, the Chechen soldiers, don't have the numbers to replace Wagner, which has already taken huge casualties itself, of course. And I would suspect as well that Chechnya is not as tolerant of casualties as the Russian prison system. Finally, the Russian army would find it very difficult to hold Bakhmut without Wagner. So I would take the view that this is more posturing and backstabbing by Prigozhin and the rest of the crew at the Russian in Russian military high command.
Now, I also want to ask you about that warning from the UN nuclear watchdog we heard about safety concerns at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Can you tell us how fragile the situation there is?
Yeah, I think it's genuinely dangerous. I'm not a nuclear engineer nor have any expertise in that, but Mr. Rossi, who leads the IAEA, is, and he is very concerned about this. He says the situation, as you mentioned before, is unpredictable and dangerous. This is compounded, of course, by the fact that Zaporizhzhia, the power station itself, which is already at a sort of danger level, according to Mr. Rossi, villages are being evacuated by Russia. Ukrainians report that the power to the station itself to keep it cool has been shut down or is being shut down. And of course, it's likely that combat operations will start around there because it's an extremely important area operationally for both sides. So yes, it's extremely concerning and very dangerous indeed.
Yeah, tell us more about that. Do you think then that Zaporizhzhia is the place where we will see the start of the expected Ukrainian counteroffensive and where Ukrainians will be focusing their forces?
Well, we need to be careful about this counteroffensive and how it's framed, it's highly unlikely that this will be carried out in the form of one blow and everyone will be free in a month. It's much more likely to be a series of assaults by Ukrainian forces at times and places of their choosing across the 4 oblasts that they are endeavoring to retake. One of those areas is undoubtedly will be Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, of course, to the west. Zaporizhzhia sits very near Kherson city, and above all, and equally importantly, very near a dam called Novokakova, which is relevant to the Crimea issue. But Ukraine may decide also, and probably will, to conduct operations in Luhansk and Donetsk too. So this won't be one operation, it'll be many, and it'll be carried out over a period of months, probably all the way up to the winter. And I would leave it to the very competent Ukrainian generals to decide when and where those operations will take place. I think speculation is interesting, but not terribly productive.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again today on DW News. That is Frank Ledwidge.
Thank you, Claire.